Hey everyone, I am Rafi Salem back with the Manhattan Edit Workshop with Josh Apter and Jason Banke. And today's special guest, the incredible Carole Kravetz. I I should have asked you beforehand. You threw in an extra name in there.
Carole Kravetz Aykanian.
Okay.
Sorry,
I'm
it's not easy. I
no,
know.
no sorries, no sorries. So to kick things off, Manhattan Edit Workshop located in Manhattan, but with classes around the world. Josh, Jason, why don't you introduce yourselves and the Manhattan Edit Workshop, and then you guys introduce Carole, and then Carole introduce yourself.
All right. Well, I guess I'll go first. I'm Josh. I'm the founder of Manhattan Edit Workshop, and we've been around over 20 years, teaching beginners how to become editors, seasoned editors how to be better editors. We've always been creative people teaching creative people, so we always bring a little bit of that why into the how of what we teach. And to that end, we like to talk to people exclusively about the why, because it's the most interesting part. So we get to do cool stuff like this. I'll turn it to you, Jason. You're below me in the quadrant thingy. I could look down like in the Brady Bunch, but I don't know where it is in the actual
Well,
recording. So
you're below me. That's funny. I'm Jason. I work for Josh, have for some time now. Yeah, pretty much reiterate everything he says. We also do events and stuff like that to do the same thing, and this is just another extension. And hopefully we have some more knowledge to pass on from Carole and talk about things in the industry.
Yeah, so Carole, we've got it's all about you. I know, Jason, Josh, it's usually about us, but today let's try to make it about Carole, shall we?
we can
So,
try.
so Carole, tell us everything. Remember, you've got open mic, everything. Give us some background, how you got started in the industry. Just go ahead.
Sure. So, as you can hear, I'm from France. I still carry that accent. That's where I was born. And originally, I was a dancer. That was my background, a modern dancer. And I came to the US on a sort of a small adventure. And somehow that small adventure became a lifelong change. And I'm still here and went to school here and I had my whole career. So when I came, it was just for a summer. But as I decided to stay and looked around a little bit, I thought that maybe it was time to rethink my dance career or think about a more sort of a longer term, like being a dancer is a short, it doesn't have a very long life. I mean, if you don't want to teach, if you just want to be dancing on stage. So I grew up in a family of film buffs. My mother was a film buff. She used to go see during the Second World War, she used to go to the movies all the time. She was like 11 years old and she would go to the movies in Paris. And she was a fan of the Hollywood film. So I've always heard about cinema growing up. And my brother was also a film buff. He would watch Godard at 12 years old. Sort of like, and even though I was in dance, filmmaking was always in the background. And so when I decided to rethink my career and I was here, I thought, let me explore Hollywood, what film schools are here and what I could do. And so I went to Los Angeles City College. And it was a really fantastic place in the 80s. This new film center had been built. They had a lot of equipment. There was money. There were great people. I met some amazing talent there. And it was a revelation that really this was the field that I really wanted to be in. And not only that, but that editing was a sort of a specificity of the business that I felt comfortable with. Although I did pursue directing for a while, I knew that editing was something that came to me easily, sort of understanding story, character, and the whole putting a performance together, an actor's performance, building that. It just came to me pretty easily. And so after at LACC, I made a short film, and I was accepted at the American Film Institute in the director's program. And there you have to direct some films and you have to edit them. And obviously I was editing them because, you know, that's what I really liked. Some people had like friends who came to edit for them, but I edited my own films. And I made some really good friends and connection. And one of my friends at AFI was actually, he was in the producing program, Gary Winnick. And Gary became a very well-known director in Hollywood. I mean, having notably directed 13 Going on 30, and many, many more. And he had he had a friend who was working for a production company. And at the time, you know, there were like all these sort of more exploitation films being made. There was this big market for video distribution in the world. And he got a really low budget together through his producing friend. And he asked all his friends to help him put this film together. And he asked me to cut it. And that's how I ended up cutting my first feature. It was sort of a horror film. And it was, what was it called? That it just escaped me, the title of that film. But anyway, so we all worked together. And then that's it. That was it. Then I realized being an editor is my place more than any other place. The collaboration with the director, the sort of a quiet time to put everything together, to choreograph in a way the film, thinking about performance, timing, everything that, you know, comes into it. I felt that in a way I was still dancing kind of in a weird way, even though I wasn't myself dancing, but there was this movement and rhythm thing that really just creatively was incredibly satisfying. And
so you just touched on so many different topics. We have so many questions. My first question, Josh, Jason, please jump in. My first question is that you land in LA and you're in Hollywood, and you just, you know, and then you just took off. Like you had no hurdles whatsoever, no hurdles being a woman, no hurdles being French, no hurdles at all. Everything was easy and smooth.
Well, there were some little bumps, but I cannot say that being a foreign student or a woman never really was a problem. Those didn't come up as the problems for me. I don't know why, really, honestly. I'm not sure. I don't know. As a woman, I realize now how complicated it was for so many women. I was lucky. It just worked out for me in that way. But it's true that it felt like once I set foot and decided in that school and decided I'm going to change career and go into it, it was like so right for me that it became easy. The you know, the hard part was to get there. But once I started, it just, you know, when something is organic and works out, and of course there were hurdles, but nothing that was a mountain impossible to climb. Nothing is ever really easy. I worked hard, you know, there were some disappointment maybe along the way that I forgot, but it was the right place for me. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Go
ahead, Josh.
Look at that. This is me and Jason, by the way. We share a brain, and so we talk at the same time all the time.
Go, please.
No, we've had students in our 6-week class who come from music backgrounds or acting backgrounds, performance background. You said something interesting about this feeling that you were still dancing in a way or performing, and it's an intangible thing because, like, I'd like to think that every person who walks into our classroom can be an editor, and you can learn it. But there are people that we've encountered who have had this sense of of rhythm. And, you know, I don't know if it necessarily translates into character and development over a long form arc or some of these more complex things that you're trying to architect, but the rhythm and pacing, there's something about that they hear the music in it.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to hear you say that, because how do you identify that in yourself? You know, it's just, you didn't say, I'm going to become a dancer so that I can become an editor. But when did you recognize that? And how does that present itself to you? Like, oh my gosh, so these things are related.
Yes, they are related, incredibly related. When you have, like, for example, let's talk about specifically a scene and people moving through a scene, you know, you have 5 characters and they're like, you have like all these angles to choose from and all these movement in the scene. There is a flow that reminds me of moving dancers through on the stage, you know, enter right, exit there, you know, and so this really, to me, relates on a very primary level. You know, it's the same thing. It really is, in a way, choreographing. Of course, the material already exists, but and you choose from it, but it has that same feeling of movement. You know, where are you going to cut? Where are you going to cut? Obviously, there has to be reasons. You don't just cut for rhythm and movement, but it has to be part of it. And I cannot tell you. I think somehow editing is also a very intuitive art. You know, you sort of respond to what you receive from especially the first pass. It's a very intuitive response, and that's where I feel like maybe most of my sort of experience in dance helps me in movement. It's to go through all this material and find a first path through it. After you have all these other things that you're trying to build, you know, story. I mean, I guess it's also constant. It's within me. It's the way I analyze things, and the sort of freedom that it also gives me to imagine that anything is possible. That you don't think in terms of square, but you think in terms of movement. So it's a little different.
I used to go to when I was interviewing when I used to be a freelance editor for many years, and someone would ask me, how would you cut this film? And you know, you can imagine the looks that I would get from them. And I said, well, ultimately, I think I look at the footage and the movie tells me how it wants to be edited. And I wasn't kidding, but people would like, they're like, what? Like, you know, they just next, like it didn't make sense, but it is kind of, you're responding to something.
Exactly.
You can't apply your own aesthetic to, you know, something that doesn't want to take it, because then you're going to come up with something arrhythmic and that doesn't, you know, really work. So anyways, that's why I'm not an editor anymore, because I didn't get enough jobs. But Jason, you had a question too, yes?
Yeah, you said you kind of jumped right in, so like to editing feature, like you had that opportunity after doing that. So you didn't really do the whole assistant editor thing. You just jumped in and learned kind of on the job. What was that like? Like to not, you know, like not have to. I don't know if you were you doing stuff with film, or you started
film.
Right,
Film.
oh, you did film.
I started. Yeah, I cut 35 millimeter. Yeah. It was sort of, when I think of it now, I'm like, wow, I never followed that path that pretty much every editor, you know, they're following, you know, they learn from watching other editors working. They watch the sort of like the language in the cutting room, the politics, you know, they learn by watching how the editor works with the director and with the producers, and all that experience is valuable. I didn't have that. I did a little bit of assistant work, but for like I say 6 months, maybe it was 3 months. I had 2 jobs before I went to FI between the 2 schools. I had like a National Geographic assistant work where I don't remember what I was doing. I wasn't working with anyone. It was like a graveyard shift where I was like putting some reels together, or it was 60 millimeter. And then I did a little bit of an assistant on a feature, but not from the beginning to end. It was a recut and I got involved. So I watched a little bit, but I guess we were all friends, and I established my own way of working from my own intuition, and somehow it seemed to work. It worked out. But it's true that I did not have that experience.
So we're going to put in the notes down below the video, Carole's prescription to going straight to lead editor from a completely other discipline. You can share, you could bottle that secret and
yes,
sell it.
I mean, you know, obviously I went to film school, and when you went to film school, you make connections with other people. And for example, Gary, who ended up directing, he was at AFI as a producer. So he hadn't directed anything really, except maybe short films before, you know, when he was undergraduate. But
I remember his name, and it's not just the mainstream film you mentioned. He had done some more independent stuff before that.
Yes, actually, he lived in New York, and he had a company that also produced.
Story. So are we talking about, is the morning show something we should be talking about because it's a current thing that you're doing?
Yes.
I mean, I'd love to talk about any of the work, but
Yes,
I
we
wanted
can.
to talk about Intergalactic because my
Yes.
son loves this movie and he's really disappointed that I didn't watch it yet. But I want you to talk about something that excites you that you're working on.
Well, I can talk about yeah, I can sort of continue with where we stopped at, or I can move forward to today. Yeah, let's talk about today. I'm just I know that I'm going to do season 4 of the morning show, which is the first time that I stay so long on a series. I kind of like to try to challenge myself and have new projects. I've never really done so many years on the same series. I used to go and I like finding new stories because there's a challenge, especially when you establish, if you're on a feature, you establish a whole new world. The world has to work, the actors, you have to find a performance. So it's there's so much to do, or on the season 1 of a series. This is season 4, but this is also a very different experience when you stay on the same show and you watch the characters and performance growing. And this has been like a family. I mean, you create family every project you go to, but when the family goes on for a few years, like all the people involved become really like family. And it's
do you find I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Do you find that editing character over an arc that long, it's almost like, is it cutting like 4 features with the same people as they continue through, like, because they must have some character growth, but you have a season where it gets from here to here, from here to here, like you get to really see this sort of deep, and you spend so much time with them that it's it's different than a movie, and that you get your 2
Totally.
hours and you're done. Now it's like you have how many hours? This is like 4 seasons, it's an hour per, so
I didn't do season 2, but I did 4 hours season 1, 3 hours season 2, season 3, and I'm going to do probably another 3 hours season 4. So a lot of hours of the same, in the same world. But
you feel them, you get like sort of in their skin.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I know the actors, I know how they work, and I know where to find the diamonds everywhere, and I understand that how they work. I mean, when you think of Jennifer Aniston, she's just remarkable. She's a remarkable actress, and she is just so there's something about her that is so unusual in the way she delivers lines that sometimes you can be taken back by it, but now I understand how she does it. And it's such a pleasure to cut her performance, because she obviously, as we all know, she can be so funny, so hilarious. And she also is so human, so fragile. She can really project all those things, and she has such a range. But so is Steve Carell was just unbelievable. He could do it all. He could do the comedy, the drama, just unbelievable. That was season 1. And we have Billy Crudup. I mean, what amazing actor on the show is.
Do they establish, like you say, they have the idiosyncrasies and they have these complexities, how much of what we see on screen is your contribution to shaping that complexity that already exists, or is it just there? It's like, oh my gosh, it's like opening presents at Christmas looking at these dailies, like I barely have to do anything.
Okay, so it's a little bit of both. There's a lot of work involved in building a performance, but when you work with a caliber of actors, they give you so much. So it's the choices of the riches, right? But you can interpret, they give you different variations of the same thing that would deliver a slightly different performances. But that's what they're good at. They give you that wide range. And so then when you start to build their performance, you have to identify where they come from, where they are going. What is it that you're really thinking? My main sort of what moves me the most, what moves me as an editor, not moves me in terms of sensibility, but what my direction is honesty. And I always try to ground the performances. Actor, so no, it's a lot of work, but it's work with great material. So it's really pleasant work, it's when you have such choices, it's a dream, really.
It seems like that show kind of resets itself a little bit too with how it presents itself. Besides the quality of the people, do you think that attracts you to staying on? It's like, I think the last season was the structure was different with flashbacks and things like that. Does that make it more enticing because of the challenges?
Yeah, because the stories sort of jump a few years, so we're always and the story moves along too. So they were enemies, then they are more like friends. I'm thinking about our 2 leading ladies, and then somehow they're on different tracks. One is in the evening news, and one has her own podcast. So it's all of a sudden the dynamic between them two is changed a little bit. There used to be so many scenes between the 2 of them, and now we have more parallel stories. So it's kind of a different way of telling the stories, the different stories. So it changes every year. And plus we have every year new characters. Like last year we had John Hamm. So, and that's what also they do so well on the morning shows, that they bring those big name actors for very juicy, characters. So every year is it's very fun. And there's probably going to be some big surprises for season 4, so I don't even know. I'm looking forward. but I can trust that it's going to happen. But so then you get John Hamm, playing this wild businessman, and it's just so fantastic to put together. So those are the surprises, it's the same show, but it's not always the same characters. There's a revolving door a little bit. You get your leads, but then some new ones. Nicole Beharie also, the Christina, the new journalist, was added this year, and she was so great. So
one of the topics we were discussing is your take on the LA vibe versus the New York vibe. Can you speak a little bit?
Are you talking about editing style, editing work?
I would say community.
Yeah.
Thrown into your work.
It's a little hard for me to say much because I have never worked in New York. I don't know what the community is in New York. All I know, if it's a bit smaller. So I think maybe people know more each other because here it's such a huge industry. I'm not sure really what the differences are.
I would say tell us more about the LA vibe. My little knowledge of LA is that you need a car to get everywhere.
Oh, that.
So
Okay.
so that being related to the industry, we were talking a few weeks ago about how in New York you're on a train, you're on a subway, and you're going what was that place called? Sound One. Get all your stuff done.
Right, we went to MPE, and it sort of reminded us of the olden days. Like, everyone used to hang out at these places together. They were hives of activity. There are like things like that, but you're commuting to get there in LA. It's not like it's like
the sense of community. Yeah, you're talking about the sense of community. Yes, this is and with the work sort of going hybrid, or it went hybrid, it isolated us even more. So yes, I would say true. It's harder here to have that sense of community. Now everybody's going back to the cutting rooms. I have asked to keep and stay on hybrid because, and I can talk about the hybrid work in a different chapter afterwards because that's an interesting thing. But it is true that we don't probably have communal like places like in New York. It is true. I've done, now that you're bringing that up, I remember meeting a lot of people. I did one show and we cut in New York for a few weeks, and I think it was at Sound One actually. It was done on 6th, right? Yeah, I forgot exactly where it was. Yeah, and met some incredible people. Yeah, I think, yeah, and it's true that it's not exactly like that here. But it can happen too when you work in the studio, you do meet people, but it's maybe a little less. That's true.
But we're also like, hybrid. The pandemic sort of was a forcing mechanism for different work styles, and people are kind of never really, they're not, they like to go back. I think some of them saying this is better. I don't have to drive to work. I don't have to, we can meet more regularly, but less often, so that I can just wake up and get to work. And I think it's good and bad in terms of a sense of community. But you said you wanted to talk about hybrid work.
Yes, I think hybrid work has been really amazing for me. And I'm not talking the car, obviously. LA, the car thing, I like to go in when I'm needed. I don't want to cross the city and be by myself all day in a cutting room. It makes no sense to me. But that's the practical, and that's not so interesting, for discussion. What's interesting, though, is that it allows me to work when I'm at my utmost creative moment. For example, you go into an office from 9 to 7. You can't be creative from 9 to 7, obviously. The brain doesn't work that way. So you might have like 4 hours of like intense, fantastic work, and then you have 2.5 hours of sort of like, I mean, that's the way I am, it's not like I can just say, okay, I'm here, now I'm working. I can do things, but sometimes they're like 2 or 3 hours, just not great. It just doesn't come. If I'm home, I can go do something else. and then I can come back, you know, maybe from 7 to 8:30 or from 7 to 10 at night or 7 a.m. Like there was something that was blocked the day before. And oftentimes, you know, I don't push it. You know, if you can't solve an issue or you're just not inspired anymore, I stop. And then when I go back the morning after, it's so fresh and obvious. It's obvious, you know. And actually, if there is one thing I would say to like upcoming editors is that just walk away. You know, when it's not happening, when your brain just shuts down, just don't force it. It's not going to happen. You just have to walk away and come back, and then everything is obvious. It's just works like magic. So hybrid is allowing you to work when your brain functions at most, you know, and you don't feel like you're wasting your time in a cutting room between 2 and 5, for example. You know, let's say there are 3 hours of just like, so you do other stuff, you know, but and then all of a sudden at 5, from 5 to 9, it's brilliant. It's, you know, it's coming back, and it's really fantastic to be able to follow these hours, to have more freedom. But obviously when you work with a producer, it's different. This is when I'm working alone, you know, when I put the show together, or if I have notes to address, or, you know.
Right.
As far as working with a showrunner or director, it's always better to be in the same room. There's no question. I mean, you can do it remotely, and I do it, but I know that there is something that is so much better when you can be in person.
Sure.
Oh,
No, and it's also faster. The sort of the ideas start kicking in, and the odd thing is you sort of answered our final question. I know we're under a bit of pressure to wrap things up, as much as we could probably really talk for a lot longer here. But I thought it was interesting that you said just walk away, because I just was talking to somebody and they said I had to become an audience to the work to really understand what was wrong with it, what it needed. So I was I was like too close to it, and I took a weekend. And I went back, and it was, like you said, it was so obvious.
Yeah.
It's just because just that little piece of time turned me into an audience, or enough of an audience to it to say like, oh, geez, like, and it just, you would never have seen it if you were just like banging your face against it for hour after hour.
It's so important to walk away when, you know, to just take breaks. You know, we don't say it enough, you know, or even just walking around the neighborhood, you know, you just
go for a walk,
you know, take a walk.
So to wrap things up, what would be your one takeaway from all this?
Well, I would say that making, you know, preparing your brain the best way possible, which is, or taking care of your creative spirit, you know, and I would say feed it, which is read books, go to performances, see plays, you know, keep following what happens in the political world, you know, read history, just feed your brain and take care of it too, which is don't ask too much don't over ask, respect it. If it's not working, just go for a walk, you know, treat it well, treat yourself well. And I think that the juices will be flowing much, much more easily.
Thank you. Anything you want to promote? Anything coming up that you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, we have I have season 4 coming up for the morning show. I've seen some 4K new Criterion beautiful 4K of One False Move recently. That is one of my favorite early film that I've done, directed by Carl Franklin, and there is a beautiful 4K version that just came out, as well as Devil in a Blue Dress. They did both of them, and we'll see what season 4 of the morning show has in store for us. You know, more adventures.
Very good. Jason, what's coming up at the Manhattan Edit Workshop people should be aware of?
Well, we have obviously we have some Avid classes and classes for Resolve coming up, color correction. But I just finished recording an event that we're going to be doing shortly from the show Foundation with the cinematographer of that, and also some colorists that should be pretty interesting, and be on the lookout for that.
And Josh, basically, would you give the advice that one should go to become a dancer? So they should go to dance school, then go to editing school, then film school, then be a producer. Should everyone just follow in Carole's footsteps?
I would say learning how to dance is a good start. But I
Well,
do like feed your brain. I think that's a great, just, feed your brain.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else we should cover before we wrap things up? Going once, going twice, last words? No. Okay. So
you wanted us to keep it brief. I know, like I said, these conversations are great, but they're loose. So we could talk for for a lot longer, but I know the audience can only take so much, and let's leave them wanting more, shall we?
Yes. So Carole, you have to come back. That's
Sure.
That's
Absolutely.
what we demand of all of our guests. So once again, everyone, I'm Rafi Salem from Manhattan Edit Workshop. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Carole, for another great edition of Talkin' MEWShop. Have a great day.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.